Welcome back to another episode of Built and Backed. Joining me today is George Damouny, venture partner at Plug and Play, who has a diverse background of finding startups to operational roles before applying his experience to investing in venture capital in early 2014. Since then, George has led venture deals in over 200 startups, primarily in retail, financial services, and sustainability. George, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashley. Good to be here. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
of course. I'm excited to have you here. For our listeners, George's full bio is in our show notes. But George, I'd love to have you start off by sharing more about yourself, your background, and what you're currently working on.
Sure, sounds good. So my name is George Damouny, as Ashley mentioned. I am one of the partners here at Plug and Play. I've mostly been a career VC, so over 11 years now as a venture capitalist. I joined Plug and Play very early when we were less than 20 employees. I was the second hire on the ventures team, and since then we kind of blew up. We have about 800 employees now, almost 150 people full time on the venture side. So I think in terms of headcount, we're one of the largest VCs in the world. We have over 70 locations globally. We're doing about 250 net new investments per year, which makes us one of the more active investors in the world as well. I've been lucky enough to lead deals actually in about over 250 startups so far for Plug and Play, mostly at pre-seed and seed levels, 10 of which have become unicorns. Companies like Honey that got acquired by PayPal for $4 billion, Customer that got acquired by Meta for 1.2 billion, and then other ones like Flutterwave, Touring, Manscaped, Rappi, Blockdaemon, and a few others that are still privately held that are still growing up in the ranks. Before Plug and Play, I did have a little stint at a company I founded in the B2C space. It's a story that was a hard learning lesson for me. We raised a small friends and family round, ran the company for about 18 months, and really didn't get the consumer traction we needed. We actually shut down the company and returned back half the capital to investors. So luckily, those were family and friends. Hopefully, I'll make them money in the future again. And then the second bout I had was actually did a marketing. I'm sorry, I ran a medical facility for about 2.5 years with another partner of mine. Um, Basically, we were doing MRIs for doctors in the Bay Area. When I joined the company, we were in debt, heavily in debt. We restructured the entire company, got the company out of debt, profitable, and then I left that to basically join venture. And venture kind of fell into my lap. I think, it's an interesting story, but I'll stop here and answer anything else that you might have for me, Ashley.
Yeah, that's great. I would love to hear that story because I think it's so interesting. As I was sharing, like before we began recording, is that you've had like all these different roles within tech. And so I'm curious to hear like what made you want to pursue venture.
It's funny because I didn't really know what venture capital was until I started a company. I started a company early in my career. I was 21. I was still in college, and a friend came to me and he wanted us to start a business around kind of like the intersection of Foursquare meets Groupon. If this was like aging myself a little bit, but uh, it was a company that didn't really get anywhere. But we didn't know how to raise money or anything else. So like we went from like recycling cans to fund our company to meeting a few angel investors through like family networks and whatnot, and then like through hook or crook, we kind of learned what venture capital was. That's where I actually learned what plug and play was at the time. Being like a really early stage pre-seed investor, we were accelerator at the time. I pitched plug and play my company. They didn't invest, but they ended up hiring me. So I think I guess I still won in that sense. But VC kind of fell into my lap in that sense where I didn't go to a tier one university. I didn't do consulting. I didn't have a huge exit. And I think Plug and Play took a bet on me being one, an early stage fund that had a great track record at the time, but not as great as we have now.
Mhm.
Um, and two, I think just knowing me through my startup days. So I think for that, I kind of came into venture at an unconventional path, one that doesn't really happen to many people, and especially what we look for now is I think a different type of candidate to what they were looking for when I got hired, right? So
Mhm.
the people I look for probably don't have the same background that I have, and it's just trying to complement what I can bring to the table, what other people can bring to the table. So. I think it's an interesting kind of path to VC, but I was born and raised in Silicon Valley. I actually grew up about 5 minutes from Plug and Play, and I had no idea what Plug and Play was before I really joined the company.
Oh, that's funny. Like ironic that you had pitched your previous company to it and then also lived like right down the street from Plug and Play. And now it's a full circle moment with you being a venture partner there.
It is. It's totally full circle, and I laugh at it when I tell the story because it is pretty funny.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'm curious to hear what drew you to Plug and Play specifically. Like I know, of course, like being in close proximity and also pitching your previous company to it, but I'd love to hear what enticed you or really made you want to pursue Plug and Play compared to any other VC firms that might have been around.
No, totally. Yeah. I think plug and play at the time, we were building a practice that not many other VCs had, which was bringing in the Fortune 1000 and trying to connect them to startups that they can pilot, license, invest, or acquire. So Plug and Play had this idea even before I joined. In 2012, we ran an accelerator program for State Farm. We did the same one for VW. And in that program, we had 10 companies that joined the accelerator program. Um, Three of them, on average, would get a pilot with VW, for example. And then the seven others wouldn't get the pilot. When they went out to market to pitch other car OEM manufacturers, they essentially couldn't get the traction in the market, given if VW wouldn't work with them in their own program, why would, Nissan, Renault, or Mercedes or whatever do that? So it kind of was a negative signal in the market. So in 2014, we had an advisor of ours and said, Amazon is taking over retail. All the retailers have to compete with Amazon. This advisor sits on the board of KKR. He did the Toys R Us deal, and he knew that Amazon was taking over basically the entire value chain of retail. So we ran Plug and Play, did a kind of open innovation day around retail. We invited retailers and brands and about 20 startups. And, you know, in the span of like 3 weeks, we had about 40 retailers and brands join us for that innovation day and 20 like really top-notch startups for that innovation day. And all the retailers and brands were saying the same thing, like Amazon is taking our business away, and we need to find startups to basically license that can help us compete with the likes of Amazon.
Mhm.
So since then, we ran this consortium model. We launched our retail program at the time, which we had four retailers and brands partner with us, like Panasonic, Toshiba, et cetera. And they were essentially trying to find startups to pilot, license, invest, or acquire. And I thought that was like a super unique approach, coming as a really early stage VC that can essentially plug that company into not only one corporate partner, but spread out the risk across multiple corporate partners in an industry that everybody was looking for the same thing. So I thought
Mhm.
that was super cool. So I guess much like Plug and Play took a bet on me, I took a bet on joining Plug and Play really early, and that bet kind of panned out because since then we launched in almost every sector that has established markets. We've
Mhm.
expanded to 70 different locations around the world, 800 full-time staff members, almost 40 unicorns in the portfolio. So I think a lot of things kind of worked out, and us being at the center and this like connective tissue across innovation now, we have almost 600 corporations working with us. So going from two or three when I joined the company to 600, going from 20 employees to 800. I think the whole kind of hypothesis around this open innovation platform has worked. And one thing that I bet on really early stage in my career was joining the company that, the mission that I believed in. And I think,
Mhm.
it worked out for the best.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, there's been rapid growth at Plug and Play, which I think is so interesting to hear about and be able to learn more from what you've shared there. And so I'm curious to hear from your perspective, joining like what your experience was of just being in that like fast-paced, rapid growth and some exciting things that might have happened along the way.
Yeah, totally. I like to say that Plug and Play has been a really unique experience in the sense that it's not only a VC that has a finite amount of capital and then we have to deploy and then raise money again and again. We're also running this, kind of pseudo consulting business and that's growing. So we get the operational experience of running businesses and launching new offices and, generating revenue. And then at the same time also using those insights and data to make the best investments on the startup side. So kind
Mhm.
of a two-part approach, which is very, very interesting and very unique. And my career and my job has shifted a lot since I joined the company. I joined as the first associate on the ventures team. I became a partner maybe, I don't know, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I'm not really sure when. Um, but throughout the life cycle of my career, it went from kind of doing everything in the beginning, which was like, you know, and I still do everything, I guess, but sales, corporate work, operational work, venture capital, sourcing, screening, investing, due diligence, um, connections between startups and corporates, VCs and startups, et cetera, et cetera. And it's kind of like when you start in an early stage company, you're wearing multiple hats and trying to get things off the ground. And it really is kind of like startup culture.
Mhm.
And as we're growing to like a mid-sized company now, trying to maintain that company culture of being a startup, is something that we strive to do every day. So we still kind of operate in these, very small buckets. We run each vertical like its own little business, and we still try to have that entrepreneurial spirit. But to answer your question, my career and my job has shifted a lot, and it's been a ton of fun. Like I joke in 2017, all I did was hire people that year. Like our team grew from maybe like 20 people to 70 people in that year.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was like a ton of interviews and just hiring and just like it was our ventures team. That was a big pivotal year for us. So it's been a lot of fun. And something that I love doing because I get to do something kind of new every day. And I get to meet people who are way smarter than me and work with people way smarter than me every day.
Well, that's what what they say. I mean, like as cliche as it sounds, you never want to be the smartest person in the room. So I
Oh
think it's
no.
really, I think it's cool that you are just surrounded by so many like intelligent people, and then also like really innovative startups and companies that are up and coming. I'd love to hear some of like your favorite deals that you've been a part of, and what the results ended up being.
I mean, the favorite deals for me have the ones that generate the most return, I guess. So,
Mhm.
Honey, it's a public knowledge now because it's been on other podcasts and whatnot. But we were their first check. We wrote the first $50,000 check into the company. Um, Almost 5 years later, actually a little bit over 5 years later, PayPal bought them, another portfolio company of ours, for $4 billion all cash. So for Plug and Play, it was an 800x return. So, in terms of like textbook home run VC, that's what we strive for, those huge, huge home run returns. Um, I think one company that's kind of near and dear is a company called Flutterwave. It's one that doesn't only generate a great financial return, but also has a huge like social impact component to it. So Flutterwave came to us, two co-founders out of Nigeria, who basically wanted to have Africa on a level playing field with the rest of the developed world
Mhm.
by doing so, enabling digital platforms to transact in Africa. So before Flutterwave, Africa was a 98% cash-based society. So when you took an Uber, you would have to pay your Uber in cash. When you had an Airbnb, you would pay your Airbnb host in cash. So the likes of like Netflix, for example, would have a really hard time transacting in Africa because it's a heavily digital platform.
Mhm.
So what Flutterwave did was they saw there's 26 disparate payment methods across mostly Nigeria. If we were to connect all those disparate payment methods into one single API, we can essentially enable digital payments across the country, which is what they did. So we believed in
Wow.
their vision, like the founders, like great founder market fit. We were in the seed round of the company. Fast forward to today, they do enable like the likes of Uber and Airbnb and Netflix to transact digitally in Africa. They're a $3.25 billion company and they're hopefully on track to go IPO in the coming years. So it's one of those like really cool stories where the founders not only changed their own lives, but also changed the country and is doing like a lot of like great social impact component to the region as well.
Oh, absolutely. That's incredible to think about. And it also makes me wonder about like the opposite end. Like, of course, you don't have to share any names, but I'm wondering if there's any deals that didn't turn out as you hoped they would, and how you kind of navigated that, like missed expectations or disappointment.
I mean, I have probably like the learning lessons for us, like as long as we learn from our mistakes, I think it's beneficial in VC.
Mhm.
And as long as we have the opportunity to invest, I think it's also beneficial. Like I have 10 unicorns I invested in, but I also have a bunch of anti-portfolio companies that I passed on that became mega companies. I can
Mhm.
name some. Like I had the opportunity to precede a company called Revolut, that became a 33 billion euro company.
Oh my gosh.
So that would have been my biggest hit. And unfortunately, I passed on it because I guess in retrospect, I probably would have done the same thing today.
Mhm.
We have a portfolio company called N26, which was growing much, much quicker at the time. And it would just been too much of a portfolio conflict to invest in Revolut, doing a very similar type of business. I passed on a company called Deal. It was a YC company that became, I think, a $12 billion company now as well. I thought the valuation was too expensive without much traction, just straight through YC. And then
Mhm.
I passed on one called Ledger that is basically like a hard wallet for crypto, which at the time when they were pitching me, I didn't understand why people would need a USB device to store their crypto until, all the hacks happened. So I think like the anti-portfolio is like one that you learn from for sure. And then I think one that you learn from probably even more are just the failed companies that you invest in. And,
Yeah.
given the volume that we have, we do have a fair share of failed companies to the amount of success that we have. VC follows like that power law of distribution where your best companies will return back all of the fund and then some. Um, I would say like one hard lesson I learned early in my career was really understanding founder dynamics. Founder dynamics actually matter a lot when it comes to building a company. It's probably like I would say being co-founders of a business, especially when you're not doing so well in your business, and it's never going to be up and to the right. There's always going to be ups and downs when you start a company. It's probably harder than a marriage or like a friendship or whatnot. Like you're going to go through a lot of trials as co-founders.
Mhm.
Um, I learned this early in my career. So a story, I won't share names, but I invested in this company that was building um, a compliance solution. And the founders were extremely accomplished. One came high level tech job from Facebook. The other one came from, let's say, a credit card processor that was transacting literally like trillions of dollars as the CTO. They came together to build this compliance solution for startups. So I was completely sold. I brought the founders in to meet with myself and our CEO, Saeed. Um, and in that meeting, the founders were very excited. They were pitching us their idea. They were almost like so excited to answer the questions. One was coming from this angle, the other one was coming from this angle. I saw that as a form of excitement and passion for the company. Our CEO saw it as they didn't align on vision, which I didn't see at all.
Mm.
So long story short, Said said, this, I trust you. If you want to do this deal, we'll do the deal. So we did the deal. We invested in the company, first check into the company. We put them in our program. They started getting traction throughout the corporates that were in our program. They actually raised a $2 million seed round from, I would say, a tier one VC on Sand Hill Road after we invested in the company. So I brought that to site and I was like, look, like I was right, you were wrong. Like I got a good VC to come in. And we actually did a pro rata. So we reinvested into the company because now site started believing it. And then after that, they raised another $7 million. So in total, almost $10 million have gone into the company. 6 months after that round, the CEO calls me and says, George, we have a problem. Me and the CTO couldn't agree on vision. We had a 4 hour board meeting and decided to kick out the CTO. He does own 18% of the company, fully diluted on the cap table that we're trying to buy back. And we're looking for a CTO. If you have any options or anybody available, let me know. So I
Mhm.
hung up the phone. I was like, okay, like going back to our initial meeting that I thought was passionate founders, Said thought it was lack of vision. He was right, and I was wrong. And I mean, Said has 30 plus years of experience. I had probably two at the time. So it was a really eye-opening lesson for me. And then it's just to cut the story really short, they got acqui-hired for $2 million, essentially. After raising 10 million, they got acquired for 2 million. All the investors lost their money on that deal. Um, so it's one thing that I look for now is just like the co-founder dynamic. And one thing that I always like to do is meet both co-founders or all three co-founders in the same meeting, and then really suss out if they have the right dynamic. Do they have a working relationship before starting this company? Do I know that the CEO has a clear delineation of roles? Like, is he or she the leader of the company, and is the CTO or the third co-founder a little bit, less dominant than the CEO? Does
Mhm.
the cap table reflect that? Does the CEO have a little bit more equity than the rest? Like all these things kind of suss out, and they do play into my evaluation of companies today.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that those founder dynamics because as you shared, like that's really important to see how these two co-founders, or even more than two co-founders, like mesh together because that totally relates to the success or failure of the startup as well. So that was a really good point that you shared there.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, it kind of has to be. We look for founder market fit as VCs, right?
Mhm.
Like, what did these founders do before that would make them successful today? And we love like this, like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk example, right? Like Peter Thiel coming from the wealth management space, Elon Musk coming from like he's a technologist with X.com. They came together to marry their backgrounds and build a money transfer service online. Like when it comes to founder market fit, these are the types of founders that we look for, like
Mhm.
complementary skills and backgrounds that won't essentially like hop over each other or compete with each other, but complement each other.
Totally. And I actually read something last week, and another VC mentioned it as well after, which I thought was ironic. But there's something about like data showing that there's more startups coming with like single founders and not necessarily having a co-founder. And so I'm curious to hear if you've experienced that, maybe with like the rise of AI and non-technical founders being able to do more, and what you really think about that.
I think anecdotally, I am seeing that. I'm
Hmm.
seeing more founders just being comfortable being solo founders. I don't know, maybe it's because they're getting funded more now than ever before, given AI and whatnot. But generally speaking, we still like to see two co-founders in a business, and it's
Hmm.
mostly just to like um, mitigate the risk of um, like God forbid one founder something happens to him or her, they get hospitalized or whatever. They have somebody else that can pick up the pace. Um, Mental health, like somebody that can pick up, the pieces if somebody else needs help, a sounding board across multiple co-founders. I think it's easier to, not easier, I mean, starting a company is hard enough, but doing it alone is lonely, especially when you're not doing so well. So I think having two co-founders for us is important. It's not a deal breaker, but definitely something that we look for in our investment committee is somewhat equal distribution on the cap table co-founders.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And when you're also looking to invest in startups, I know you mentioned like the founder dynamics. What are some other things that you look for to see if it'd be a good investment or not?
As a VC, I mean, I think it's kind of obvious, but we try to triangulate the right market, the right team, and the right product. And that triangulation um, kind of has to like, there's weights attached to it, right? Like the market has to be picked up. You have to invest where the puck is heading, not where it currently is right now. um, the founder market fit in terms of team. What did they do in the past? What will that experience relate to success in the future? And then of course the product. For us, we're mostly pre-seed and seed and some Series A. So product for us is important, but we know that you're going to pivot 5 or 10 times before you hit product market fit anyways.
Hmm.
So we're really the common denominator is the team. Um, and we feel like a good team can navigate rough markets, can pivot their products, can do extraordinary things. So keeping it like really, really simple and like I'll quote my another VC colleague Ed Sim from Bold Start Ventures. It's like don't overcomplicate things. Just invest in really good, extraordinary founders. And it's true. It's like it's not in pre-series. That's what you need to do. Getting the deal and providing the value to those entrepreneurs, I think, is a way harder thing than actually executing and being successful as a venture capitalist.
Hmm.
Um, Getting the right deal flow is more important than anything else as a VC.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you had shared like what made you want to join Plug and Play, like what it was about you that that was attractive about Plug and Play. Like, why do you think startups should pitch Plug and Play? Like, what makes your firm a good VC firm for them to try to get?
Yeah, I think again, like no other VC has the type of value that we can provide in
Hmm.
terms of access into decision makers at the Global 1000.
Hmm.
So today we have, a ton of brands working with us, like I can name a few of them, I think, publicly: Nike, Red Bull, Pepsi, Coke. We have a lot of luxury brands that are not publicly named, but very large technology brands. We have a ton of banks like US Bank, BNP Paribas, a lot of insurance companies. Essentially, these corporates are coming to Plug and Play, giving us their technology focus areas and pain points, and then we're essentially venture matching them to startups that they can pilot, license, invest, or acquire. So
Hmm.
in terms of value add, I think no other VC has the type of kind of pseudo consulting arm that we have that can connect startups to decision makers and essentially revenue generating sources. So I think startups don't come to us for the money; they come to us for that value add, essentially.
Yeah.
Luckily, I think it's worked out because we have a great track record. We have, 40, almost 40 unicorns in the portfolio that we pre-seeded or seeded, often the first check into those companies, and then help them throughout the value chain. And then once those companies are ready to scale up internationally, we have 70 offices globally that have team members, government support, VCs, corporations, et cetera, that are readily available for those companies to scale up and grow. So I think we're very uniquely positioned in that sense where um, companies can come to us for additional VC funding through our VC network, revenue generating sources through our corporate network, marketing through channels like this, and so on. And then, of
Mhm.
course, just support on the advisory side and whatnot.
Yeah, and I feel like that part, like specifically, is huge. Just having the support beyond the check, like you said, like connections and marketing and whatever else it might be, to really feel like that startup is supported and as they kind of go through with growing and taking off from there.
Yeah. I like to say that startups can think of us as their extended business development arm
Mhm.
throughout the life cycle of the company. So we're long-term investors. We're not going to, exit at the next round. We're here until IPO or acquisition. We have the luxury of time, given our balance sheet investments don't have external LPs to report to. We do have funds that we report to that have more time constraints, but when we're pre-seed and seed investors, we're not constrained on time. So we're essentially sticking with our companies until some kind of liquidity event.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to hear what like verticals or sectors of tech you one are getting more interested in as of this year, or two, what you see might be getting bigger as 2026 approaches.
Everything is AI. So, I mean, across
Yeah.
all sectors, like it's fintech and AI, it's healthcare and AI, it's insurance and AI, retail and AI, even in sustainability and AI. So, I think, it's hard to escape that. And that's where the market's heading. And we see this clear shift of where it's heading. And I think that's fine. For myself personally, I like looking at the intersection of fintech and AI, some retail technologies still. It's a tough space to invest in, but I'm still interested in it. And then sustainability broader. I think in terms of market, we're definitely seeing healthcare pick back up. The 2020 was a huge pickup for healthcare. It dipped a little bit in I would say 22, 23, and it's definitely picked up again in terms of just new startups being founded. Cybersecurity is huge. Um, Anything in financial services, etc., is pretty hot. So like infrastructure, developer tools, anything that would sell into banks or insurance companies.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you think there's any that aren't getting the attention they deserve, or do you think that people might be like disregarding that could be really big and up and coming?
Sectors.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think sustainability could be one of those sectors. I mean, during
Hmm.
the last administration, I think there was a lot of government support with sustainability, and that was like a whole thing around like carbon credits and carbon neutrality. And I think now it's gone more into like critical minerals and onshoring. I think that's still sustainability, but I think in general, the space has cooled down since the new administration. But I think wrongfully so, because I think people still care about it. It's just a different topic now, different topic of what
Yeah.
to care about.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I wonder if maybe it could be considered almost like energy dominance, but I'll look at it from that lens and flipping it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think so. Yeah.
Mhm. I'm curious to hear for anyone who's listening to this episode who is following a similar career path like you did, who kind of jumped around to different positions before landing in VC. What advice would you have for them for following a similar path, but just being able to get started and really getting their feet wet and diving right in?
Yeah. I would say being a generalist is not going to give you the competitive advantage anymore. If you do want to break into VC, I would say entrench yourself into a topic so deep that you become a powerhouse in that topic where you can bring value to the other partners of that firm, where you can fill in the holes where they don't know. And that can be a topic of I don't know, crypto and blockchain, if they're interested in that topic. It can be a topic of healthcare and AI or whatever it is. Just, I would say being a generalist um, is too common these days to break into VC. And I think a lot of aspiring VCs don't have a depth of knowledge into one specific topic. And I think those are the types of analysts and associates that we're looking to hire now that can essentially fill in the gaps between the other kind of partners that we have in terms of knowledge.
Yeah, that makes sense of being able to have that complementary branch so that way someone can fill the other person's weaknesses and vice versa for them.
Yeah. I mean, we interview a lot of people who we ask them like, what are you interested in? And they'll start naming like just very broad topics, robotics, AI. We're like, okay, great. So like, tell us some topics in AI. And then they
Hmm.
might like go a little bit deeper on the topics. Then when you drill them again on, specific use cases for AI and healthcare applications at the patient level, they have no idea. And I think those are the types of candidates that we're looking for. And I think VCs generally look for people who can talk deeply about a topic and know a lot about a topic. And I think those are the types of candidates that impress us because we're seeing companies every day. We're talking to startups every day. I think we have a general knowledge. I consider myself kind of a generalist now, although I started in fintech, retail, went to fintech, went to sustainability. That makes me kind of a generalist because I'm across multiple topics. But still, I would say like I'm more of an expert in fintech and retail than anything else.
Hmm.
So I want the analysts to know more than me about fintech if they're going to apply for a fintech position at my firm.
Oh yeah, because that will in turn be a huge asset to your firm, but then also for any startups who are looking to find a VC firm that specializes or has like deep knowledge in a specific topic that their startup is in. I think that is really beneficial to them as well.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I'm curious to hear, I always love talking about like personal brands with people in VC. If that's something that you prioritize both as yourself and with anyone you're looking to hire, and how that might play into the success that you've been able to experience.
It's a great question. I don't spend too much time on it. Really should spend more time on my own personal brand. I think it was when I joined as a VC, we had no brand at Plug and Play, and luckily now we have one. I had no personal brand, and now I think maybe I have a network. I don't know if I have a brand, but I have a network of people at least that will refer me deals, which I think matters probably more than the actual like publicly facing, X brand, whatever. There's a lot of like Twitter X VCs that do really well on social media, and then when you come down to their like track record and portfolio, maybe not so well. I haven't focused on it, and I don't focus on our new hires to have like a personal brand before coming into Plug and Play. I think it's one that we all need to work on actually at Plug and Play, and I'm happy that you invited me onto this podcast so I can work on my own personal brand. But it's one that I think it's good for VCs, but I think what matters more is the network and getting the right deal flow into your fund. And I think you do that by not just having a nice brand out there that has like very opinionated posts on X, but it comes from real value that you provide to the founders that you invest in, and having those founders be your champions and your reference sources to other potential portfolio companies. Because that's what I do now. If I'm talking to a company and they don't know who I am or they don't know who Plug and Play is, they can talk to our portfolio companies. I'll give them references and I'm like, hey, talk to any of them as well, like and ask them how we helped you as a company. And I think that goes a long way.
Oh yeah,
Founder references go a long, long way. So,
totally. Yeah.
like a bunch of brute force, grueling, like a lot of work, and now it's still that, but it comes more naturally now than it did, 11 years ago when I started.
Yeah, that's a great point of just the importance of like building that solid network, making relationships with people, and being able to take advantage of that word of mouth marketing ultimately that they might be sharing. So that way it supports you with different deals that might be coming in.
Totally. Yeah. You're only as good as your next best deal. So you have to
Mm,
basically keep that referral source going.
yeah, that's a great reminder. I love that. And one thing I'm curious to hear, George, is with so many cool startups that are coming out right now and really awesome people who are building really cool things, I'm curious to hear who you're admiring in tech right now, whether it's another VC, a founder, a startup, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think I admire a lot of people because I that's how I learn essentially. I learn from people around me, and I get to meet CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. I get to meet tier one VCs. I get to meet the next unicorn founders. I think it's super exciting to be in the position in the seat that I'm in. Um, it's a really good question, and it's kind of a loaded one because I don't want to just single out one person, but I would say one person that I look up to as a VC, it's one person who I met very early in my career at an event. His name is Salil Deshpande. He started a fund called Uncorrelated Ventures. I'll have to send this to him afterwards, but I met him at an event and I invited him to Plug and Play many years ago to meet companies and as an associate, and he was a GP at Bain Capital at the time. He showed up to Plug and Play and spent 2 hours with me meeting some of our portfolio companies, and I thought that was like so humble and cool of him. And he went off to raise his own solo GP fund. Now I think he's on his third fund, over 700 million in AUM, with no like not even an admin on his team. So it's a solo person, and his
Wow.
current fund is like $350 million itself. And he and I pass along deals all the time to each other, and he's just one that I really admire. Super humble, but incredibly smart and talented. And he's been on the Midas list, I think, like 8 or 9 times out of
Oh
10
my
years.
gosh.
He's an incredible person to know in my Rolodex, and one that I constantly look up to as a VC in my field.
Yeah, that's a good one. George, this has been such a great episode, and I really appreciated you coming on the show and sharing more about everything that you're doing at Plug and Play. And now I'd love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect further.
Yeah, you could find me online at plugandplaytechcenter.com. That's our main website. And if you are interested to join one of our programs, there is an apply button there. We do actively look at all the applications. Also on LinkedIn, George Damouny, and I should get better at Twitter, so I might start one of those as well.
Sounds good. I'll include all of those in the show notes. But thank you again, George, for coming on this week's show.
Thank you, Ashley, for your time and for having me. Really appreciate it.